Okay, so far we've been dealing with spheres and stuff, but what if you want to know how to light an object that's a more complicated shape like that? Well, actually, we go back to spheres again. And so let's just make a sphere. And let's see, maybe it is this color. Okay, and to find out, we need to find out where the light's coming from. So maybe the light's coming from, I don't know, top right. And so we need to figure out, well, if it's coming from here, then shadow is probably going to cut around here. Okay, so we can find our shadow color, do that halfway to black thing. So halfway to black would be here. Can warm it up a bit, or saturate it and warm it up a bit, and get that. All right, and now I'm just going to shade in this sphere. Making sure I keep the darkest area at the terminator. And we get some highlight. And maybe there's some reflected light on this sphere as well. So also, I guess I'll change it so it's a bit more less in shadow, a bit more in light. So let's make some reflected light. Let's say there's like a pink light from below. So we can go ahead and add that. And maybe there's another light source directly down. So we could do something like this as well. So you could actually layer these light sources on top of each other. Oh yeah, I don't want to do that one. Maybe it's too much, but I will brighten this side. So there we go. That's going to be our sphere. I guess I could add a stronger highlight if there's like a point light. So let's just, okay. So there's our sphere, and now we're gonna make this rendered using this. Well, how do we do that? Well, the important thing is to think about planes, and that's why it was so important that we deal with planes in the beginning. Now, if you look at this sphere and you imagined it was more low poly, like a low polygon model, you could break these down into planes. And you can also see that this part is facing directly towards us, right? This part is facing up. This is facing that way. Maybe there's a plane here that's facing that way, right? So you look at the sphere and it tells you, you know, what any plane would be, because you know, if you need to know, well, what would a plane that's sort of facing down like that, where is that on the sphere? Well, maybe it's around here, right? You could imagine that. So then you can use this to determine that, because all the planes are going to be the same. They're going to be lit the same way, provided that, I mean, with certain exceptions, of course, because, you know, if this was a very big object, then even if the planes are facing the same direction, if they're further away from the light, they're going to be darker. But let's ignore that for now, and let's ignore also the idea of cast shadows. Let's just not worry about that right now. But we can already use this to figure out this. Let's go ahead and do that. So this plane right here, it's sort of facing forward and this way, right? So maybe it is, maybe it's right here. And so we can just take this value, or this color, and paint this. But what else is facing in the same direction? Because it's going to be, if it's the same direction, it's going to be the same lighting scheme, right? So that's also facing that way, that's also facing that way, and that's also facing that way. These are all facing in the same direction. So we can go ahead and just paint them the same color. And again, this is why it's so essential to understand what your planes are, to be able to break down things. If you're thinking about painting a face, well, you've got to think about what are the planes of that face. If you see a nose, you can break that nose down into its basic planes. And there are I don't think I've done a planes of the face tutorial yet. I plan on doing that in the future, but there are references to that. And you could also do a trick, which is to take your hand and make it flat and then just place it on top of your, the face in a certain position. So if you, for instance, you place it on top of your cheek, it will tell you what plane that is, right? Like you've got your hand, right? And it's on your cheek. Well, that's telling you this is the plane, if you thought of your hand like a plane, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Okay, so what else? Let's say, okay, now we have this plane, which is facing the side and that way, so maybe somewhere right here. So there's that one. Is there any other planes that are facing in this direction? Yeah, right here and right here. So we can block those in. And not to forget that one. So it almost becomes like a coloring exercise in a way. Get this in. And then there's this top plane straight up, so that would be that. Can fill that in. And I'd recommend, if you can, just, you don't have to even make random shapes, but you can if you want. And this works on organic shapes as well. I just wanted to use a very flat shape so you really get a sense of the planes thing. And this one is facing maybe something like that. So that's going to give us that. And I don't think there's any other planes facing in the same direction as this one. So that's good. And then there's this one facing down. So maybe it's this. It's catching some of that reflected light. And I'm just using a pencil tool so that, there's no opacity or anything. So I can make nice, clean color blocks. This one, this facing down one, is maybe that. And I am sort of guessing. I mean, I'm not being absolutely precise, but it's you can figure it out based on feeling. And this is facing that way, so that's going to be very light. Now, if this happened to be exactly perpendicular to the light, because it's close to that, but let's say if it was right there, then it really would get super bright. But because it's not exactly, then it won't. And then for this plane, it's a bit more like that. It's very close though. And now the last one is this internal one. And that's just tricky because it starts out as a side plane and then it goes underneath. So a facing down plane, which is something more like this. So we could actually put in that plane, sort of facing down, almost like this one right here. And then take the side one. And then there's going to be a transition where it turns from one to the other. So I can just switch to my brush and then fill that in and get like a nice gradation going on as that plane turns into the other plane. And that's it. That's how we would handle a complex form using a sphere test.